I used to be someone who took 3, 4, even 5 days to make a decision, wallowing on and saying, yeah, I'm just trying to make a good decision. It got to a point where I even lost a multiple five-figure contract from an eight-figure entrepreneur. And unfortunately, he didn't even come back. And it's not because I did anything, special. It's not because I needed time. It's just because I was indecisive as hell. But now I make decisions double, triple the speed, and even helped one client make an extra $10,000 a month because of that. And he made that decision in less than a day. Not speed. It's just a thought out, systematic process to create effective, faster decisions. And I'll show you what's helped myself and what's helped other clients, including the one I just mentioned. Now, what do we use here? We use a framework called codes, right? And it's part of a model that I have called the relentless operator. So what is actually codes? What is codes? It's an acronym. So C is clarity of outcome, O, options are excavated, D is the consequences of the options itself, E, evaluating the probability of each option actually happening, S, your strategic power move. And finally, once you've cracked the code, it's time to close that loop. Now, this framework is there for a reason. It's because most business owners who come to me aren't actually failing because of strategy. That's not the reason. They're failing because they can't decide or they're too slow. And so code fixes that. So the first one, C, we have to be clear of the outcome that we actually want. And not the outcome that we want in our present self, actually. It's what would myself from the future, the one that's building the company for, so that my family can have a better life. The person in the future, the person who you want to become, what outcome does that person want? And you bring that from there and you bring it down to yourself at this current point. Once you're able to get super, super clear of that, almost that can even solve the problem in its own because then when you become clear of who you want, first of all, who you want to be and what you want from the decision that you need to make, it allows you to expand and open up those possibilities for yourself. And so the problem is that when someone isn't clear of what they want, their brain becomes threatened and the nervous system becomes threatened. And as a result, instead of looking at who you want to be and making a decision from who you want to become and where you want your business to be, you make a decision based on past mistakes, past errors, and that belief that these past things will equal the decision that you have to make in this current moment. And so it's about actually slowing ourselves down and asking yourself, what do I need? What do I require for the business from the future? What does my future self need in order to make this decision? In 12 months, what does the version of you who made the right call look like? Once you've got that, and once you come from that powerful place, make the decision from there. Now we're on O. We have to excavate the different options that we have. Here is the most common trap that happens with most high-performing business owners, unfortunately. They only see two options. Do or don't. Hire, don't hire. Launch or don't launch. Take the deal or walk away. But that's not a decision. That's basically a coin flip with extra steps. That's effectively what you're doing. And so binary thinking is what your brain does actually under pressure. It feels fast, it feels decisive, but you're actually making a decision from a place of fear and a place of almost temporary comfort. And so here's what I know from working with 6, 7 figure business owners is you are almost never choosing between two options. You are choosing between two options that fear has pre-selected for you, right? Again, the do or don't. But the actual landscape, The actual options that are available to you is much wider. And your job is to step in and really excavate the different options that you have in this deal, in this decision that you need to make. And it's so important that throughout this entire process, you actually write things down. Don't do it in your head. The last thing that you want to do is to do it in your mind, where the different beliefs and different negative self-talk can come in and impact the decision-making process. Systemize it. There's a powerful distinction that can be met here is systems versus psychology, right? Remove the psychology element of it, stick to the system and write it down. Take it from here in front of you. Writing down every option, including the ones that feel ridiculous. Because if you dismiss them without actually examining them, you may not know how they might actually come in handy, right? And so, because of those, the ones you rejected before you even looked at them, that's where your most creative leverage probably lives, to be honest. So, do that. Do that now, right? Eliminate, once you've have your options, then you can see in front of you, okay, these are the things that are available to me at this current point, not just one or two. But now you realize once you've really excavated it, there's so much more that you can actually give and you can actually have an option of doing and having, right? But give yourself a time limit when you are creating these different options, right? When you're excavating these options, give yourself 10, 15 minutes. But almost the minute that you are sort of going into minutes, for example, if you will set the timer for 15 minutes, but you're going into 16 minutes, you're no longer planning. You're actually now just procrastinating. You're just trying to figure out, trying to create more different options that may not even be available to you, right? Once you are able to create all the different options within a specific time frame, actually ask yourself, what are the chances, the consequences of each and every option. Now, there is usually you know, a negative connotation when it comes to consequences. People think consequences is usually only the bad things. Well, it doesn't need to be, you know. What are the positive and the negative consequences that coming down from this? The downside and the upside of every option. The paralyzed operator only maps the downside. And this is actually, if you look at it from a neuroscience perspective, it's one of the reasons also why a lot of people end up not making decisions quickly is because they make bad decisions actually, decisions. And it's because their focus is already on the negative. See, the moment we choose to focus on the negative, that's where our direction, that's what our energy will focus towards. So the next time you make a decision, or you made a decision in the past actually, but you only saw the negative from it, you will create that energy and your body will reform that energy and use it in your current decision-making process. So the decisive operator uses both the upside and the downside. So here's a question for every option on your list. What does this create at 90 days, 12 months? What does it cost? Not just financially, but in time and energy, in leadership, in capacity. Don't just think financial, think how else does it serve me or does not serve me. But when you're doing that, map the failure scenario first. Not because you're a pessimist itself, but because the operator who sees the downside clearly is more confident in their upside, not less. Counterintuitive, but true, right? And once you've done that, we move on to E, evaluating the probability of each and every scenario happening. Now, this is where the fears, the limiting beliefs, all of these things, this is where it absolutely breaks down. Because now you are being present and slowing down to what will actually happen and what are the chances of it actually happening, right? And I go back to what I was mentioning earlier about the fear and the limiting beliefs. Because yes, it may feel overwhelming that you have all of these options available in front of you. That's why a lot of paralyzed operators stick to one or two because the less options they have, the less decisions they have to make. But really and truly, that's making it out of fear. And that fear is coming from past experiences. And so the moment we can strip all of that away and go back to being present and what's in front of us, that is the moment we can actually ask ourselves, okay, we are coming from a place of nervous system safety and regulated nervous system, right? Each option, what are the chance of it this happening or that happening? What's the chance of this option failing or succeeding in respect to where I am at the moment? The moment you can do that, you can distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. Because a lot of the time, our brain actually begins to distort and generalize, amongst other things. And the moment it begins to distort the level of threat that you may have, that's the moment where a danger may look worse than what it actually is. And the thing is that every danger, whether or not imagined or real, it sees the signal and it responds every single time. So, what's the antidote? Honest probability calibration. For every consequence you map out the the percentage of it actually happening. Is it likely? Is it 80% likely or even 8% likely? What's the genuine probable outcome? Or is it the fact that my emotional center of the brain is just running wild? Ask yourself these questions. These are very important questions that you want to ask yourself in order to actually see what serves you and the business, not just what serves your threatened nervous system. So you've
Right?
defined your outcome, you've expanded on your options, you've mapped out the consequences, you've calibrated the possibilities. Now you find what I call the compound decision, the strategic power move. Not just the best option, not just the safest one, but the move that actually solves today's problem. And it builds advantage for every decision that comes after that. That is the difference. It's almost you want to drive a Ferrari, but you're currently driving a Honda. No disrespect for Hondas. I have a Honda myself, but if you want to create faster decisions, you need to create decisions that allow you to compound, right? And so ask yourself this question: does this option open more doors for me? Then it closes. If I make this move, does my next decision become easier or harder? Because here's what I know about the decisions that actually change businesses. Every decision either compounds or depletes. And the ones that compound, don't just solve the problem that's readily in front of you. They position they position you and your business for the problem that may come after that. So the compound decision is always the long-term move, the long-term decision, even when the short-term feels more exciting, right? And so here is this trap I need to name. This is the trap. This is really the trap. Specifically for you guys, the business owners, the high performers, the growth operators. You are wired to chase the bold move, the dramatic pivot, the high energy option, the thing that feels like momentum. But the bold move and the compound move are not always the same thing. They don't always come in one. Sometimes the power move is more quiet. It doesn't feel like it's a dopamine hit. It doesn't release that dopamine that you probably want, which probably also doesn't help you. Again, from my last video about dopamine and serotonin. And it doesn't look impressive on a whiteboard, but 12 months down the line is the one thing that will compound the decisions for everything that follows that. So this particular step asks and requires of two things, two questions. Does this open more doors than it closes? And does it make the next decision easier or harder? If both answers are yes, that is your strategic power move. And so once you've done the work, once you've finished, like we said, CODES, this is the moment you have to close the loop, not reopening it at all. So You are telling your nervous system, instead of saying, I don't trust this, let's check again, you are telling your nervous system, I'm making a decision from my future self, from what serves my purpose, my vision, and the business. And you connect to that. You connect to that. Patrick Bet David had something that in a recent workshop he talked about will and skill. So the skill of creating fast decision making is connected once you've done the systematic process of it. Closing the loop connects you back to the emotional aspect, where you connect back to the why you're doing things, why, why you want to build the business so that you can live your life with your children, with your partner, with, allowing yourself to have that freedom, not be just a cog in your business, in your own business, connecting back to that why, the will. So the moment you can close the loop by connecting to that and saying out loud that I've made a decision based on that, that's the moment your nervous system does not feel threatened and it goes back to that level of safety. So for us as Muslims, we say Bismillah in the name of God, in the name of Allah, and we move forward. And try doing this. Try setting a 30-day no revisit rule. The only exception is new information, not new fear, not new doubt, not a bad night's sleep. New factual information. And here's the reality of things, that that will come. That's that it will always come. That's not the point. But the thing is that it's not a signal for you to re-examine what you've made or what decision you've done. Because your nervous system will test you, will test that decision. But it doesn't mean you need to open the door to creating that threat unnecessarily. This is where you reaffirm the closing loop, reconnect to making a decision based on your vision, your future, your purpose. Going through that systemized process. How did I go back about this decision? I did this, and that. Almost reaffirming, asking yourself, conditioning yourself that this is the process that I've done to ensure that this is the best decision that I've made. And so, if you go back to the decisions that I've made myself, where I've doubled and tripled my speed, and one of my clients who's made an extra $10,000, as well as other clients who've made faster decisions, it wasn't about making decisions that feel decisive. It's about actually making it and creating a system, a process, following, mastering that process whilst detaching from the outcome. And within that process is create having that system which allows you to take emotion out of it and see for what it is. And once you've made that decision, you close the loop by reconnecting back to your vision and purpose. And here's your task before the next video. Take the decision that you've been sitting on, the one that's been living in your head for more than 2 weeks. And you know exactly which one I'm talking about. Run it through the codes framework. I'll leave a worksheet in the description below. And then come back and tell me in the comments, and what did it crack? What did you see for yourself? And so answer that question, go through that framework, and in hopefully in the next video we'll go through how you can close the loop properly as a decisive operator. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more high performance content for business owners. Remember, the decision belongs to you, the process belongs to you, but the outcome is not up to you. It belongs to Allah. I'll see you in the next one.